SCP-682, aka Hard to Destroy Reptile. Object Class Keter. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-682 must be destroyed as soon as possible. At this time, no means available to SCP teams are capable of destroying SCP-682, only able to cause massive physical damage. SCP-682 should be contained within a 5 meter by 5 meter by 5 meter chamber with 25 cm reinforced acid-resistant steel plate lining all inside surface. The containment chamber should be filled with hydrochloric acid until SCP-682 is submerged and incapacitated. Any attempts of SCP-682 to move, speak, or breach containment should be reacted to quickly and with full force as called for by the circumstances. Personnel are forbidden to speak to SCP-682 for fear of provoking a rage state. All unauthorized personnel attempting to communicate to SCP-682 will be restrained and removed by force. Due to its frequent attempts at containment breach, difficulty of containment and capacitation, and high threat of Foundation exposure, SCP-682 is to be contained inside redacted. This Foundation will use the best of its resources to maintain all land within 50 kilometers clear of human development. Description: SCP-682 is a large, vaguely reptile-like creature of unknown origin. It appears to be extremely intelligent and was observed to engage complex communication with SCP-079 during their limited time of exposure. SCP-682 appears to have a hatred of all life, which has been expressed in several interviews during containment. See Addendum 682-B. SCP-682 has always been observed to have extremely high strength, speed, and reflexes, though exact levels vary with its form. SCP-682's physical body grows and changes very quickly, growing or decreasing in size as it consumes or sheds material. SCP-682 gains energy from anything it digests, organic or inorganic. Digestion seems to be aided by a self-filtering gills inside of SCP-682's nostrils, which are able to remove a usable matter from any liquid solution, enabling it to constantly regenerate from the acid it is contained in. SCP-682's regenerative capabilities and resilience are staggering, and SCP-682 has been seen moving and speaking with its body 87% destroyed or rotted. In case of a containment breach, SCP-682 is to be tracked and recaptured by all available mobile task forces, and no teams fewer than 7 members are cleared to engage it. To date, redacted, attempted breaches have numbered at 17, while successful breaches is numbered at 6. See Addendum 682-D. Addendum 682-B. Portion of recorded transcript of redacted.
Now, why did you kill those farmers? If you don't talk now, we'll remove you from this attempt and place you back into... Pardon? Speak up. Move the mic up closer. The microphone only has so much gain. Move it closer to it. Don't mess up, man. Look at it. He ain't...
Addendum 682-E. Termination options. Log event SCP-682-E18. Dr. Redacted attempts to use SCP-409 on SCP-682. General Redacted, and Dr. Redacted observing. Exposure. SCP-682 began to tear here at the point of contact, causing massive trauma to the area. SCP-682 requests several times to know what it has been exposed to. Crystallization begins. It's very much slower than normal. SCP-682 who shows signs of extreme pain and begins having seizures. Crystallization stops at 62% conversion. Crystallized area explodes, causing massive physical trauma to SCP-682. SCP-682 recovers from exposure despite the loss of limbs and organs. SCP-682 begins regeneration, stating that it will attempt to kill and consume all staff involved. All been fed SCP-682-E18. SCP-682 who appears to now be immune to SCP-409. Use of other SCP items to terminate SCP-682 must now first be tested on samples of SCP-682 before full-scale testing. In accordance with the Dr. Redacted's recommendations, see document 27B-6. Dr. Redacted and Dr. Redacted have requested permission to attempt the termination of SCP-682 using SCP-689. The request is currently pending approval from the Redacted. It has also been suggested by Dr. Gears to use SCP-182 in an attempt to communicate with SCP-682. SCP-182 has expressed reluctance and it refuses to enter the containment center of SCP-682 if at all possible. Test log T98816-OC18/682. Cross SCP termination and testing for SCP-682. Due to the highly aggressive, adaptive, and intelligent nature of SCP-682, termination testing has been ordered with clearance from O5 Command, with major concerns raised about possible developed immunities. Due to the failure of SCP-409 and possible adaptations, all tests must be carried out on tissue samples taken from SCP-682. This step may be bypassed by O5 Command order. Item SCP-017. Tissue test record. Sample swallowed by SCP-017 without incident. Termination test record. SCP-682 exposed to SCP-017. SCP-682 issues several sounds at extremely high volume, damaging several recording devices. Sound extends across several wavelengths, reported as the most god-awful roar by staff. SCP-017 appears to stumble, then return to a far corner of the containment area. SCP-682 attempts to break containment of both SCP-682 and SCP-017. SCP-682 is suppressed by agents and removed. SCP-682 states, "You foul bags of tissue, you don't data expunged." Notes: it is unclear if SCP-682 somehow damaged SCP-017 or communicate with it. Analysis of the recorded sound is ongoing. Item SCP-063. Tissue test record. Sample eradicated. No traces above molecular level remain. Termination test record. SCP-063 was refitted to the end of a rotary arm, which deployed into SCP-682's whose enclosure. Initial approach proves it was partially successful, with SCP-682 losing more than 20% in body weight before regeneration overtakes the destruction process. Newly regrown tissues are not vulnerable to SCP-063's eradication effect. SCP-682 destroys the deployment arm and SCP-063 digs a hole through the enclosure's ground where it is later recovered. SCP-682 succeeds in extending a long prehensile limb through the hole and maiming between two security personnel before containment is reestablished. Hypothesis: 682 is not bound to base Earth biological chemistry and can adapt itself to be organic or inorganic as necessary. Some of the boys in the lab are arguing whether we can classify it as living. At least we understand life. This worries me because an undying intelligent monster, well, that's where you start getting sacrifices in your name, Dr. Zara. Item SCP-162. Tissue test record. Sample entangled without incident. Termination test record. SCP-682 exposed to SCP-162. SCP-682 begins thrashing violently, emitting several roaring sounds and issuing profanity directly at the testing staff. SCP-682 becomes entangled with SCP-162, primarily in the lower body, head, and left forelimb. Entangled areas undergo massive trauma due to SCP-682 thrashing. After 4 minutes of continued exposure, SCP-682 lunges away from SCP-162, severing its lower jaw and left hind limb, and causing serious tissue damage in many areas of its body. SCP-162 remains attached to the left forelimb of SCP-682. SCP-682 breaks containment using SCP-162 against several agents, staff, and researchers, resulting in 11 deaths and 86 injuries. Forelimb in SCP-682 removed from SCP-162 during reestablishment of containment. 2 additional deaths occurring during the recontainment of SCP-162. Note: General Redactor has requested that Mr. Noakuya and the members of the staff involved with the approval of this test report to Site Command for disciplinary hearing. Item SCP-061. Tissue test record overridden by O5 Command. SCP-682 exposed to SCP-061. SCP-682 enters the relaxed state of consistent with SCP-061 exposure. SCP-682 is given the command "Lie down." SCP-682 remains unresponsive. Command repeated twice before SCP-682 lowers itself to the ground. Movements noted to be very sluggish and jerky. SCP-682 given the command "Roll onto your back." SCP-682 unresponsive. Command repeated 3 times. SCP-682 several times, partially rolling over before returning to former position. Command repeated 6 times. SCP-682 appears to undergo a violent seizure, partially rising before collapsing to the floor. SCP-682 given the command "Stand up." SCP-682 rapidly rises and breaches containment. SCP-682 ignores all commands given to it. Several agents and staff responded to reestablish containment. SCP-682 emits a high-pitched screech All human beings within in a 15-meter radius has only enter the relaxed state, consistent with SCP-6061 when exposure. SCP-682, who consumes several members of staff before being contained by specially equipped emergency response teams. Sonic Stun. Hunt adaptation lost from SCP-682 2 weeks after. Note: study into SCP-682, who integrated SCP-061 into its biology, is ongoing. Item SCP-053. Tissue test record. NA. Overridden by 05 command. Termination test record. SCP-682 introduced to SCP-053 containment area. SCP-682 appears to be very confused and shows no sign of being affected by SCP-053. SCP-053 appears to be afraid of SCP-682 and hides behind a chair in her containment area. SCP-682 lowers itself to the ground, resting its head on the floor. SCP-053 approaches 682 and after several seconds of hesitation, briefly touches 682 before rapidly returning to her hiding place. 682, who does not react in any way. 053 reapproaches his 682 and pats his head, causing it to exhale through its forward nostrils. 053 claps and hops in place several times before embracing the head of 682. For the remainder of the testing period, 682 appears to be in a very docile state. With only 2 low-level escape attempts being made, 053 is observed to bring toys and other items to 682 and make several drawings on its forward carapace with crayons. Staff entering at the end of the test phase are immediately attacked by 682, resulting in 2 deaths and 5 injuries. 682 contained and moved to a separate containment unit. 053 observed crying for several minutes after 682 is removed. Notes: the reaction of 682 is notable for several reasons. First, it is the first few incidents where 682 has come in contact with biological tissue and not enter a rage state. Second, it has raised questions as to the physical makeup and composition of 053 in regards to the lack of response of 682. Third, it has provided a possible solution to long-term containment. However, approval for mutual containment of 2 highly dangerous SCP items in a single containment unit is not likely. Item SCP-123. Tissue test record. Tissue sample absorbed by the core. Termination test record. Test cancelled after review of testing done between SCP-162 and SCP-682. The potential issues arising from SCP-682 gaining control of one SCP-123 are too great at this time. Review of this proposal will be made if SCP-682 is totally incapacitated by some means, with no potential escape or sun adaptation. Item SCP-173. Tissue test record NA. Overridden by 05 command. Termination test record. SCP-682 introducing to the containment area of SCP-173. SCP-682 makes several screeching noises and quickly presses against the wall furthest from SCP-173, staring at it the whole time. SCP-682 continues to stare at it as 173 without pause for 6 hours. Agents equipped with large caliber sniper rifles dispatch and shoot out the eyes of 682 at the same time, stopping all observation of 173 and 682. After resuming observation, 682 is shown to be on the floor, with several injuries around its head, neck, and legs. 173 is seen to have tissue from 682 on its hands. 682 rapidly regenerates damage and moves to a different wall, developing several sets of eyes on various parts of its body, mainly covered by thick, clear caps of armored carapace. As 682 maintains observation of 173 for an additional 12 hours, despite additional efforts of agents and Foundation staff. 682 allowed to exit containment area and recaptured into temporary containment. Notes: after review, it appears SCP-173 was unable to do lethal damage to 682 due to a major difference in physical size. A possible repeat of this does maybe be if 682 is damaged enough to reduce its physical mass to a level equal to with 173. Item: Dr. Cleft. Tissue test record: NA. Termination test record: 682 introduced to a testing area. Dr. Cleft introduced into testing area. Dr. Cleft and 682 stare at each other for approximately 3 minutes. Dr. Cleft slowly backs out of the testing area as 682 continues to stare. Dr. Cleft attempts to open the door of testing area. Door of testing area determined to be locked. Dr. Cleft reportedly uses several loud expletives and then attaches an unknown device to the door, keeping his eyes on 682 the whole time. 682 continues to stare. Dr. Cleft detonates a small plastic explosive charge on the door, causing a containment breach. 682 continues to stare. Here, Dr. Cleft engages emergency secondary lockdown doors and declares a partial containment situation. 682 does not react. Dr. Cleft proceeds to Experiment Observation Center. Item: High Altitude Impact. Tissue test record: denied by 05 redacted. Termination test record: testing denied by 05 redacted. Notes: seriously? Drop it out of an aircraft and then let it fall? Who? Item: 1 ordinary human child. Tissue test record: NA. Termination test record: child began to scream and cry when SCP-682 was introduced into the cell. Subject was immediately and messily devoured by SCP-682. Notes: okay, so that didn't work so well. Maybe the fact that the kid was crying made 682 perceive it as hostile intent. Guest researcher Dr. W. Item: 1 ordinary human child, drugged to cancel extreme emotional reaction. Tissue test record: NA. Termination test record: child stood and smiled, giggling at 682 with no sign of fear. SCP-682 devoured the subject messily. Maybe we can try that again. I'm sure there's a kid who will make friends with like SCP-753 did. Guest researcher Dr. W. Item: Guest researcher Dr. W. Tissue test record: NA. Termination test record: subject screamed in terror and pounded on the door to the test facility, begging to be let out. SCP-682 devoured it messily 3 minutes after being introduced. Notes: Fing sadistic asshole. I've got no sympathy for that moron whatsoever. Introducing children to that Fing monster? What the hell? No. Assistant Director Clef. Item: redacted W. Redacted cutting laser. Tissue test record: tissue sample was successfully bisected. Did 13 times before adopting a mirror finish. Termination test record. After multiple attempts of the main body of 682 was successfully bisected into parts that were equal with the mass of at T plus 7 colon 13 hours. Dead scraps were moved from the room, and while the two halves subsequently designated SCP-682-A and -B were regenerated. After recovery period, 682-A-B appeared to survey the area and evaluate each other, presumably in anticipation of an attack. Surface fluctuation indicative of internal modification were noted, but all external changes occurred and disappeared far too quickly to be adequately described. High-energy bioluminescent organs on the face, spine, and four limbs were observed, as well as both specimens usually forming, pulsing, seeing disappear again over for the course of a few seconds. At T plus 35 colon 42 hours, 682-A and -B simultaneously collapsed on the floor, and all vital signs ceased, remaining in the state for the following 48 hours. At T plus 84 hours, the laser was used again in an attempt to cut 682-A and -B into more manageable pieces, leaving some in minor structural damage in the room as the laser reflected off their skin. As both -A and -B remained immobile despite the increased potential for escape, 2 D-class personnel were released into the room. Immediately upon their entry, data expunged. Technical failure of observation equipment in a test chamber breach was detected from the outside, activating safety protocol T988-16-OC-108/682-N147. Containment was successfully re-established at the cost of redacted security personnel, D-class personnel, and researchers, including doctors, data expunge. The majority of the testing area was considered unsalvageable when demolished for later reconstruction. Experiment supervisor Dr. Redacted was found unconscious and in critical condition outside of the observation chamber. See medical logs for redacted. Medical staff succeeded in sufficiently reviving him to be debriefed by Agent Redacted, whereupon he was harshly reprimanded and data expunged. Only 162 who was found in the lockdown area surrounding the wreckage, apparently at a near full mass rather than the expected 50%. Scattered tissues within the facility account for the missing mass. Dr. Redacted's testimony indicates that SCP-682-A and -B exhibited high degree of coordination following the security breach, but that once 682-B became heavily damaged by security personnel, it was immediately devoured and reabsorbed by 682-A. Total loss of one of the 682 specimens is considered highly improbable, and searches have been called to a halt. Agent Redacted. Note: as much as our department would love to know whether 682 retained a single consciousness is this dissection, or whether the two counterparts were actually able to cooperate until the stalemate was ended by external forces. For practical purposes, we do not understand any circumstances of vice. I was trying that again, Dr. Huakuya. Item: 60 megaton thermonuclear bomb. Issue test record NA. Termination test record. Testing denied by O5 redacted. Notes. One would think that putting 682 in the epicenter of an explosion that can cause third-degree burns at a distance of 300 kilometers is a good idea, but as long as our odds of survival we simply cannot go through with it. Yes, it's a goddamn nuke, but if 682 survives and adapts, it would be blown beyond belief. O5 redacted. Item SCP-662. Tissue test record NA. Termination test record. Mr. Dees did summon and asked if he can destroy SCP-682 permanently. I'm sorry, sir. I'm terribly sorry, sir. I'm afraid I can't. Mr. Dees is asked if he can kill SCP-682. Again, sir, I'm terribly sorry, but I'm afraid I can't. Mr. Dees is asked if he can incapacitate SCP-682. As a matter of fact, depending on how sir means the word incapacitate, and depending how long sir wishes the creature to be incapacitated, yes. These is explained on to expand on how he would perform such an action. Sir, the simplest and quickest method, which I must point out would not be the most efficient, would be for me to offer myself for the creature to devour me. Certainly, its offensive capabilities would be lessened while it is occupied by consuming my flesh. This would be as simplest as it requires no preparation on my part, sir. But I'm certain you'll understand that the overall effect on the creature would be insignificant. Right to engage the creature in combat, either with or without weapons, I could simply occupy its attention and offensive capabilities for a longer interval. Unfortunately, I'm afraid the creature would eventually defeat me, at which point I would begin consuming my flesh, as I have previously described. However, I could certainly booby trap my person with a variety of noxious substances, soporifics perhaps, or explosives, or perhaps encapsulated neurotoxins, or even redacted, so that when the creature doesn't consume me, it sustains further damage. That said, sir, I must remind you that the creature's tendency towards regeneration means that any damage I inflict would be sadly temporary. Mr. Dees is thanked and dismissed. Note: Mr. Dees' knowledge of redacted is not be considered as a security breach. Item SCP-689. Tissue test record overridden by O5 command. Termination test record. SCP-682 exposed to SCP-689. Lights shut off in the containment area. Lights remain extinguished for 5 minutes. Lights are switched on. 689 remains in its original position. SCP-682 is in a pool of gray and black liquid, with no observable life signs. D-Class issued to physically verify SCP-682 termination, with 2 agents supervising. D-Class enters 3 steps into the containment area when 682 rapidly rises and attacks D-Class personnel. SCP-682 breaks containment and escapes, killing 1 agent in the process. Remaining agent killed by 689 due to accidental observation during testing. Notes: it appears that SCP-682 is not alive in a way that is currently understood, or is immune to SCP-689. In addition, it appears 682 has prior knowledge of SCP-689, or was somehow able to understand its function in order to play possum and escape. Item SCP-738. Tissue test record, NA. Termination test record, researcher citizen in SCP-738-2 and asks, what would you want to in exchange for permanently destroying the entity which we refer to as SCP-682 while leaving this planet, its biosphere, its human population, its in human civilization, the SCP Foundation, and the rest of the universe intact. The entity takes form with this same entity as Test 203 states, your Foundation couldn't afford it, and you personally definitely you couldn't afford it, and does not respond further. Item SCP-743 Tissue test record, sample consumed without incident. Termination test record. Mobile container with SCP-743 was transported to the test chamber, into which 682 was released from primary containment. 743's container was open and remotely 743 observed resting. SCP-682 appears to ignore 743. After redacted minutes, 743 started flowing. 682 appeared to notice within seconds. 682 cautiously approached 743 and tasted its flowing liquid. 682 started to lap up the liquid from 743. After seconds, 682 who grasps S743 with its forelimbs and started pouring the liquid straight up from 743 into its mouth. 682 drank for several projected minutes. At times, data expunge on its back. 743 stopped flowing and started defeating. 682 tried to fight off ant swarm, but was soon covered. Swarm started to defeat on 682, who stopped moving. Minutes later, after 682 had been reduced to 79% of its original mass, 682 opened its mouth and stuck out its tongue. 682's tongue had become 5 meters long and sticky, like an anteater's tongue. 682 started to lap of the ants off itself with its tongue, eating thousands of ants at once. 682 and 743 continued to feed off each other for redacted hours until testing was terminated. 682, who displayed faster than normal regeneration for days afterward. Adapted tongue remained for days. Note: 743 treated 682 as organic, but that's hardly conclusive proof. More significant is the question whether consuming 743's liquid contributed to S682's heightened regenerative abilities. If, as suspected, it did, 743 and 682 need to stay far, far away from each other. Dr. Lambert. Item SCP-807 Tissue test record, NA. Termination test record, a 682 special, 10 kilograms of rotten meat and sharpened bone splinters, 10 liters of rancid mayonnaise, 1 potassium cyanide, 1 liter of potassium cyanide, and 1 kilogram morphine hydrochloride, combined into a solid mass and then transmuted via 807, was dumped into the testing room. SCP-682's devoured special then began and loudly demanding more. 9 minutes later, SCP-682 collapsed. After 45 minutes of observation, 682 had not moved. 2 D-class personnel in anti-807 environment suits were sent in to verify that 682 was in fact terminated. D-class were equipped with further specials in case 682 required required further distracting. Specialists were placed on the ground in front of 682's head. In response, 682 opened its eyes and began gnawing weakly on the nearest special. D-Class began touching 682, believing that it had been rendered harmless. At this point, 682's skin ruptured in at least 11 locations, releasing high pressure, estimated 2.7 megapascals, jets of blood in all directions. Contact with SCP-682's blood breached into the integrity of the NT-807 environment suits and both D-Class personnel that were contaminated. D-Class personnel began in data expunge by the time when 682 had finished consuming the second special. Its skin had healed over, and both D-Class personnel had terminated. 682 then devoured the third special, so with the same speed and enthusiasm as it had devoured the first. Item SCP-826, equipped with one copy of the Gemini's friendly thing that can and will kill S682 permanently if it so much as spots that damn lizard. A 12-page story written by Dr. Redacted, detailing a large friendly monster that stayed to be capable of permanently killing 682. 2 and 1 D-Class personnel, D682-32, equipped with one 2010 Duca multi-strata motorcycle for the purpose of evading 682. Tissue test record. Termination test record. Story is put between 826 and placed into large empty room redacted meters in dimension with a remotely operated doorway large enough to send 682 through. 682 is brought in front of the entryway very securely. Once researchers clear the area, the door remotely open, exposing a green pasture similar to the one described in the story. 682 is reluctant to go through, so D682-32 is sent and through as bait. 682 follows through doorway, whereupon the doorway closes behind him. 30 minutes later, 682 bursts back through the door where it was set through, somewhat worse for wear, killing redacted researchers and redacted agents in the process. Recovery Snell described her story's pasture as having it become a battleground, featuring impact craters with enormous body parts scattered around, parts thought to be from the story's thing. Recovered her story is re-entitled The Gemini's Friendly Thing That Tried to Kill 682 permanently but failed, and is noticeably thicker with 209 individual pages that detailed an epic battle between the two monsters. Additional attempts to coax 682 into 826 have been met with non-compliance on 682's part. Item SCP-914, tissue test record, a data expunge. Termination test record, data expunge. A fine or very fine is no longer to be used by any personnel having contact with 682 at any point. In addition, any objects that have been in contact with 682 at any point are not allowed to be processed by 914. Any attempt to burp this directive, data expunge. Notes: 682 is too large to fit into the boots in most forms. In addition, tissue tests have shown that 682 has unpredictable reaction. to 914. Finally, 914 is too valuable a research tool and too delicate for this type of test. It is nearly damaged at the incident, and data expunge by be repeated should results be recovered. Data expunge. Notes: does this rule surprise anyone? Given what 914 does to normal organics, Dr. G. SCP-272 Tissue Test Record NA Termination Test Record 682 is released into enclosure amidst a circular array of 32,000 watt stadium lights of which only one is switched on. 272 is dropped onto 682's shadow and embeds itself in the reinforced concrete as expected. 682 quickly discovers that it was trapped by 272's presence in its shadow and starts to attack 272. 682 then stops midway through his attack, examines 272 closely, follows an incomprehensible string of words, and slowly backs away from 272. All three stadium lights are then switched on and off in random stroboscopic disco pattern at 4 Hz. 682 is forcefully hurled around the enclosure in random directions in accordance with the stroboscopic pattern and sustains heavy damage. After 55 minutes of this process, 95% of 682's epidermis have been abraded away. Its anterior left limb has been severed. 63 of its teeth have been broken out of its jaw, and its skull has been fractured to the point of both of its eyeballs have been dislodged from their sockets. And at this point, 682's exposed subdermal tissue begins to luminesce. The luminescence rapidly increases until it is brighter than stadium lights, which eliminates 682's shadow entirely. 682 then collapses and is no longer affected by the stroboscopic pattern. 682 continues luminescing for 48 hours, remaining mobile for the duration. D-class personnel who recovered 272 from the enclosure were not attacked, but sustained permanent retinal damage from 682's luminescence despite wearing eye shields. After 48 hours, 682 resumes normal activity. Note: how did 682 not to attack 272? Did it recognize the artifact? Was it able to read the glyphs that was carved into 272's surface? If 682 is literate, is it able to textual mana kill agents? Suggested methods were widely studied are welcome. Item SCP-343 Tissue Test Record NA Termination Test Record. See Incident Report 682 TF FTBS1. Item SCP-963 Tissue Test Record N/A Termination Test Record. See Incident Report 662-W02BTL. Item SCP-702 Tissue Test Record. Tissue sample offered as straight item to SCP-702-1. SCP-702-1 accepted trading it for what appears to be the 2-patty hamburger as commonly sold by redacted franchise. Termination Test Record 682 is contained and offered as a trade item to 702-1. 702-1 considers the tank for roughly 15 minutes. It's for taking an item left in exchange as a metal cage containing a specimen of Pathologica Malicious or rose ring parakeet. 16 hours later, 682 is returned to the chamber where the training was affected without its containment tank. 702-1 was reluctant to divulge information regarding this event. Examination of debris regurgitated by 682 during the preceding containment reveals fragments from a number of curious items, including data expunged. The parakeet is currently being kept at Dr. Quater's office. Item SCP-096 Tissue Test Record NA. Termination Test Record contained tank containing 096 was placed in 682's cell. Personnel vacated the vicinity and the tank was opened remotely. Screams of two entities continued for 27 hours, at which point the noise abruptly stops. Sonar-based video feeds view 68096 severely wounded and huddled in the southwest corner, apparently upset. The feed shows 682 on the north end of the room, approximately 85% of its initial mass absent. Recontainment teams retrieve both entities with relative ease. Further attempts to expose 096 and 682 cause it to turn away from 682, jumping in place while clawing at space and screaming. But SCP Item 5 SCP-536 Tissue Test Record. Tissue divided into samples and subject to the individual effects of SCP-0536's dials. Notable results to follow. Increase in G tissue restructures itself into neutron degenerate matter. Decrease in E tissue maintains loose integrity as a cloud of ions regenerates upon reestablishment of laws of physics. Decrease in theta. The tissue disintegrates. Tissue termination test record. SCP-682's containment tank inserted into SCP-536. Speed of light. Strong nuclear force and fundamental charge dials decrease progressively. 682's containment tank is nearly immediately destroyed, and 682's body begins disintegrating. Due to intense light and radiation, visual is lost. 3 neutrons, pions, kaons, and more exotic mesons, described and rejected, are detected. 55 seconds into the experiment, the primary detection equipment fails. Upon boot up of the secondary detection equipment, dials are at minimum levels. 682 is again visible in the chamber, reduced to roughly 1% of its normal size. Analysis suggests 682 has reformed into a previously unknown form of matter, kept together by quantum effects. As assistant researcher redacted becomes aggressive, so it turns the dials randomly and violently before being removed from the premises. 682 recovers from its original shape upon restoration of standard physics. Note, I don't blame him. I could swear, at one point, that thing looked like it actually enjoying the experience. Item SCP-524 Tissue test record. Sample consumed without an incident. Termination test record. SCP-524 when SCP-682 introduced into testing chamber. 682 examines 524 suspiciously, at which point 524 begins gnawing on on 682's anterior limb. 682 jumps backward, bellowing. 524 pursues 682 for 2 minutes, at which point 682 climbs 4 meters up the wall of the testing chamber and is beyond on 524's reach. 524 ceases his pursuit and begins washing its face with its paws. It continues this activity for 15 minutes, during which at time 682 remains 4 meters up the wall and beyond 524's reach. 524 then crosses to the other side of the test chamber and begins breaching containment. Test aborted. Item SCP-811. Tissue test record. Sample consumed without incident. Termination test record. Direct exposure of SCP-811 to SCP-682 disallowed due to unreasonably high risk of specimen loss. Instead, mucus from SCP-811's Palmer or plantar surfaces is collected over the course of redacted months and sprayed on 682 with high pressure hoses. 682's body mass is reduced by 27% before the mucus reaches a complete bone covering of the body mass and is unable to decay it further. Item SCP-1237. Tissue test record. Termination test record. A deliberate containment breach was induced, which an SCP-1237-1-L specimen was permitted to observe from a safe distance. 13 security personnel were killed before containment was established. Subject was dosed with redacted to encourage remotely onset of SCP-1237. And is instructed to dream that 682 was a small house cat with no special abilities, and that the security team had been able to destroy it easily. 7 seconds later, after onset up SCP-1237 event, subject began to seize by Lee. Subject was declared dead after 32 seconds. The autopsy discovered the subject's body. He covered with scratch and bite marks and infected with bubonic plague, leg toxoplasmosis, and subacute regional pneumocystis, crack scratch fever. The bodies of the deceased security personnel displayed similar characteristics. A house cat was found in 682's containment chamber for cleaning off blood off of its coat. Said cat regenerated into 682 within 3 hours. Item SCP-1361. Tissue test record. Sample consumed without incident. DNA markers from 682 present in 1361. Sample afterward. Sample showed increased resistance to incineration. Termination test record. A secondary sample of 1361 was allowed to grow to 100 kilograms in mass. 682's containment chamber was purged of acid, and 1361 was poured onto 682 from above. 1361 covered and fully engulfed 682, and no activity was observed for 3 hours. In the period from 3 to 7 hours following exposure, 1361 began to develop legs, jaws, and physical appearance similar to 682. 1361 breached containment and attacked Foundation staff in a manner consistent with in 682 breach and killed 17 personnel. 1361 proved immune to small arms fire in the state. Aerial Versal of napalm was necessary to destroy a sample by incineration, after which a skeletal and circulatory system identical to 682 was retrieved from its remains. Remains were returned to 682's containment chamber, where they regenerated into 682 within 6 hours. Subsequent tissue testing that indicated that 682 temporarily contained DNA markers from several species present in 1361, as well as temporarily exhibiting a mild sense to pork rinds. Item SCP-1933 tissue test record sample immersed in 1 meter of body fluids from 1933. Sample fully converted into ice cream. Termination test record 200 liters of biofluids were collected from 1933 over a 3-month period. Fluids were introduced into 682's containment chamber in bulk. 682 begins consuming the fluids rapidly and manifesting apparent signs of intoxication far more rapidly than a human would after consuming the equivalent amount of Irish cream. This has been hypothesized to be the result of portions of 682's anatomy being transubstantialized into Irish ice cream. However, instead of dying, 682 continues consuming the fluids. When it has finished consuming all the fluids, 682 collapses on the floor and begins loudly vocalizing while clawing spasmodically at its base and abdomen. After 5 minutes of this, 682 begins vomiting out what appears to be the bodily fluids of 1933, but in much larger quantities. As well, the floors and walls of the containment chamber are instantly covered into Irish cream upon contact with the vomit test, as resulting in structural failure and containment breach. Test aborted. Remainder of vomit test incinerated. 682 subsequently manifests no further signs of intoxication. Item SCP-507 Tissue Test Record NA. Termination Test Record. SCP-507 was physically attached to SCP-682's left forelimb with nylon zip ties, while 682 was inactive due to physical destruction incurred during an unrelated containment breach. Attending personnel continued to spray 682 whose body, with the exception of the limb to which 507 was attached, with hydrochloric acid provided via high pressure of hoses. After 7 hours and 52 minutes, SCP-507's anomalous property is activated, and it and SCP-682 both disappeared. SCP-507 re-manifested in an unpopulated area adjacent to site redacted approximately 800 kilometers away. 63 hours later, as to an entity possessing large fangs and vestigial wings, but otherwise identical to 682, by the nylon on zip ties to a different color than the ones applied by containment personnel at the beginning of the test. A handwritten note was found to SCP-507's chest, reading as follows: Dear Universe 5802 Sigma Blue Romeo, it's your problem now, suckers. Item SCP-2599 Tissue Test Record NA. Termination Test Record. SCP-2599 was ordered to attack SCP-682 until it is 200% dead. 2599 proceeded to engage 682 in combat for 42 minutes, at the end of which three of 682's limbs had been severed, its thorax had been crushed, and both of its eyeballs had been ruptured. 2599 then seized 682's head apparently preparation for pulling it off of 682's body. In response, 682 vocalized the phrase, "Kill me, you sack of organs, do it!" 2599 immediately released 682 and stood unmoving until security personnel removed it from the testing chamber. Subsequent attempts to terminate 682 before it could regenerate from its injuries were ineffective. Note, it is hypothesized that the concrete "kill me" in some way took the procedure over for the more abstract attack until it is 200% dead. Item SCP-513. Tissue test record, NA. Termination test record. Begin log. 682 temporarily incapacitated via incineration and transferred to a video monitored soundproof containment chamber. 513 reintroduced into the room and fixed to robot arm. 682 regenerates fully. 513 is rung 3 times via robotic arm. After the first ring, 682 howls and covers its ears. Due to the difference of anatomy and lack of visible ears, it can be safely assumed that the motion of covering sides of its head accomplishes this. 513, the robotic arm retracted from the test chamber and returned to containment. 682 uncovers its ears and begins to pacing the test chamber. 682 continues pacing. Mass amounts of aerolite, sedatives, and tranquilizers introduced in the containment chamber via ventilation. 682 loses consciousness as it begins sleepwalking. 682 breaches containment. Hallucinations of a pale, thin, large, clawed entity resembling 682 stalking the containment site. They were reportedly experienced by all present and site personnel. Security footage shows no such entity on site. Due to mass hysteria, security teams were unable to establish containment of 682 and are seen on footage firing repeatedly at walls before being dismembered by thin air. Mobile Task Force at the 10 See No Evil is deployed, equipped with HUD video enabled on enclosed helmets. 682 is located in 513's containment cell, still unconscious, curled around on 513's skeleton cube. 682 returned to containment and awoken via high pressure HCI sprayed and complained. And he said he was having such a lovely dream. And long. Persistent monitoring and separate testing of both 513 and 682 since the experiment has shown no lasting effects on either object. Post-testing observation. Based on what appeared to be an initial adverse reaction from 682, we don't know if the entity incorporated 513 into itself or if it worked the other way around. Either way, in light of the loss of 67% of site staff having 45% of site D-class, requesting that cognito-hazardous item testing for 682 be suspended until we understand what the hell happened here, Dr. Corboros. Approved by 05-4. Item SCP-2578-B. Note: test was conducted independent by the Foundation by SCP-2578. Secondary designation as a termination test has been given to Incident 2578-682-1. Tissue test record, NA. Termination test record. During routine maintenance check of 682, whose containment enclosure S682 sustained 5 penetration wounds in rapid succession and remained unresponsive for a period of roughly 32 minutes. Upon recovery, 682 yelled, "F you all three you of your moons," toward the ceiling. 5 minutes afterward, Dr. Naismith has received the following instance of SCP-257-8-B on his personal email account. 3 crescent symbol has failed. 3 crescent symbol is greatly embarrassed and regrets the continued existence of your unpleasant lizard. Orders were orders, and for record, 3 crescent and symbol didn't miss this. Item SCP-2617. Tissue test record. Not attacked by SCP-267-17-A instance. Termination test record. 682 was released in the abandoned village of Redacted via Russia via airlift and proceeded to attack the village. Coordinates were set to one which correspond with 682's position, thus bringing up to the redacted did 2617-A instances holding unique variants of 2617-B. 2617-A instances attacked 682, destroying up to 45% of its biomass. 5 hours after the beginning of the termination test, 682 released a series of radio waves. 2617-C dissipated. In all 2617-A and 2617-B instances underwent spontaneous sublimation. Personnel supervising the termination tests were also exposed to the radio waves. Interviews with these personnel suggest they are unable to recognize the concept of Russia. Item SCP-169. Tissue test record denied by 05 redacted. Termination test record denied by 05. Notes: no can do. I can understand how you might think that tracking down 169 and then making it consume 682 would work, but it survived and adapted it to everything else we've tried. If it survives being eaten by 169 and, God forbid, grows as big as it, humanity would be screwed beyond relief. Denied. Item SCP-939 and 939. Tissue test. Not attacked by 939s. Termination test record. 939s built into the containment cell for 682. 939s were seemingly distressed and refused to attack 682 while repeating a call for help. 682 then attacked the two, devouring both and roughly and brutally mutilating the bodies of both subjects. Notes: 939 and 682 don't match well. I guess we will not be using them anytime soon. Don't release the beasts again. Item SCP-173 with a photograph of 096 attached to it. Tissue test record. NA. Termination test record. Denied by 05. Notes: no, absolutely not. Setting aside from the problem of 682, in 173 that cannot be observed for fear of triggering the response of 096 is a self-perpetuating catastrophe that the Foundation does not, under any reasonable circumstances, have the slightest desire to unleash. Denied with vehemence. Item SCP-204. Tissue test record. Overridden by 05 command. Termination test record. SCP-204-4-2's dangerous seeking behavior was played upon to create a desire to test 204-4-1's combat prowess. Through the use of carefully crafted stories, SCP-204-2 was informed of the existence of 682, who hints were given to 204-2 that 682 was impossible to killed by conventional means, and only a warrior with special talents could defeat it. 682 was released, heavily sedated, into the testing chamber. 204-2 was then sent in through the airlock. Begin log. 682 regains consciousness and begins to move about the test chamber. 204-2 who begins shouting expletives is at 682 to provoke it. 204-1 materializes at this time into an oversized armored knight bearing a massive battle axe and kite shield. 682 produces a near-deafening roar and charges at 204-1. 204-1 clashes with 682 in a fair simile of an ancient gladiatorial battle. 204-2, who seems to be watching the battle with rapt attention. Combat between the two SCPs is extremely violent due to their size and strength. 204-1 has succeeded into chopping off or tearing loose all of 682's limbs, along with much of its flesh and part of its head. 204-1 has suffered for tremendous damage from the combat. 204-1's shield arm is broken off at the elbow, and the axe is missing half of the blade. The armor for 204-1 wears is severely scraped, dented, and torn in pieces. It appears unable to walk, though it still stands in place between 204 and -2 and 682. 682, while not dead, is sufficiently incapacitated. Researchers direct 204-2 to have 204-1 feed on the remains of 682 in order to regenerate itself. 682 begins to regenerate while 204-1 is busy consuming the severed pieces of it. 682 regains motion and proceeds to attack 204-1. This time gaining the upper hand due to 204-1's current state of damage. 204-2 and 682 will tranquilize. 682 additionally hose with hydrochloric acid to prevent additional breach attempts. 204-2 removed from testing chamber and returned to containment. End log. Notes: While SCP-204-1 does appear to be capable of defeating 682 in pitched combat, the carnivorous nature of 204-1 does not seem to be an effective way of neutralizing 682. 682 regenerates too quickly to allow 204-1 to destroy it completely. 204-1 will hereby propose as a last resort countermeasure against 682 in the event of a full containment breach. If nothing else, the bastards can hack each other to bits while we try to regain control of the situation. Addendum. Proposal denied. We are not now, nor we are ever going to risk the containment breach of a second Kier class SCP during an ongoing Kier class breach situation. 05 Command. Item SCP-682 instance transplanted from alternate dimension. Tissue attest record denied by 05. 5 termination test record or testing denied by 05. Notes: potentially permanent stalemate in between instances would solve containment. However, transporting an instance to our dimension would be unnecessarily dangerous. It's not even to speak of containing another one, or the consequences of if they chose to cooperate. Denied. Item SCP E2337 tissue test record. SCP-2337 was informed that that 682 tissue sample was a tone-deaf food critic who needed to hear a convincing argument as to which food item is the greatest in existence. After a 10-minute speech from 2337 from the superiority of gummy worms. The tissue sample had been disintegrated from the resulting sonic waves. 2337 had appeared highly pleased with itself. Termination test record. After being told that 682 was a prominent anti-gummy worms extremist, 2337 emulated the sound of a trumpet and entered 682's chamber. Begin log. Noble turkey stats. Fist of the 11,000 war cushions. If our cracking a damn the tornadoes precise boom gak. Leave. Guten night. Die have gak. 2337 demolishes the southern blast door to 682's chamber with the vocal shockwave, then exits once again appearing highly pleased with itself. Continue. Breach of 682 averted it after minimal fatalities of containment staff and log. Item SCP-3108. Tissue test record. Tissue was transformed into a piece of Uroplatus primordiatus, giant leaf-tailed gecko tissue. Termination test record. D-1782 was instructed to enter the 682's containment chamber and shoot 682 with 3108. After missing 6 times due to fear, D-1782 successfully hit 682 within 3108-1 instance. However, instead of becoming inferior as expected, 682 began to grow larger and gained the ability to explode whenever threatened, and then reconstitute itself. 682 eventually breached containment in this state, causing some redacted casualties. 682 was successfully subdued by gunfire. After it returned to its normal state, and was recontained. Notes: I have a theory on what just occurred. 3108 causes things to be inferior to the subject, right? Well, 3108 transformed 682 into something that would have been seen as worse and inferior by the Foundation, larger and strong enough to break containment. 682 actually decreasing in power would actually be seen as inferior to us. Dr. Western. Item SCP-2719. 682 who test record. 682 went inside. Termination test record. Outside. Item SCP-3930. Tissue test record. SCP-682 whose tissue who was brought to the void in C660. Termination test record. 682 was introduced to 3930. Theme was successfully existing. However, despite 682 no longer existing, Foundation personnel still perceive 682. When the entity is looked at, a vivid image or memory recalled in the brain of the personnel that is described as resembling the appearance of 682. 2. This entity has been observed attacking personnel and killing them despite the fact 682 does not exist during these attacks. It should be noted that personnel who killed in this manner die when their brain ceased to function, despite the appearance of physical damage occurring on their bodies. All destruction caused by this entity becomes real, even the entity that caused it didn't. 15 hours later, 682 was found within its containment chamber. It is unknown how 682 managed to gain in existence after this incident. Item SCP-3207. Tissue test record. SCP-682's tissue was shot by SCP-3207, resulting in its complete destruction. No intact organic residue left by SCP-682's tissue. He was found after the interaction. Termination test record. 682 was shot by 3207 several times. 682 was destroyed for a period of 6 hours before 5 smaller organisms theorized to have been composed of 682's tissue grew within 682's containment chamber. These organisms successfully reached containment and merged with each other, recreating 682. Item SCP-3922. Tissue test record NA. Termination test record SCP-3922 was used with a 10-minute recording of security footage taken of 682 during a containment breach, which to add the semblance of fictional narrative for the purposes of 3922. Labeled Lizard, the Tale of the Unpleasant Lizard. The objective was witness a plausible termination of 682 and replicate the results. The video was altered into a 72-hour or military epic film entitled Cephalus Among the Living, displaying an unsuccessful full-scale military assault on 682 by instances of 3922-A. The cast included Alan Rickman as Commandant Maris, 3992-A officer tasked with leading 682's termination, and Michael Clark R. Duncan as Lieutenant Havish Hisham. The apparent protagonist of the first third of the film. No lethal damage to 682 is observed. At the end of the film, the last surviving 3922-A stormtrooper, played by Patrick Swayze, activates an experimental device that teleports at least 5 instances of gigantic primates analogous to the description of SCP PC-003 onto the battlefield. The final shot is of S-62 laughing as the creatures approach in the 1968 song "Living in the Sun," like "Living in the Moonlight," by Tiny Tim. Tim plays in the background. The end time card reads to be continued. Note: the fact that the cast is composed entirely of noteworthy deceased actors and actresses could be possible due to 3922's connections with SCP-2922. C. Item SCP-3519 Tissue Test Records. Tissue sample has no observable reaction to exposure to SCP-3519. Termination Test Record 202-2519. Acid levels were lowered by 232 centimeters and 682's head was allowed to regenerate. 682 was exposed to 3519. 682 presented no evidence of suicidal ideation and was observed to laugh continuously for 193 seconds while the acid levels were restored. 02-29-19 Warning: Gear class human integrity compromised. 682 Warning. 03-812-19 682 containment personnel are presumed deceased. Remote centers is 25% operational. Indicate a probable breach. 682 should be assumed to be at large. 056 08-12-21 probable encounter with 682 who crossing Colorado River. Run Highway. Ways 163 of 11 in ruins. 35.7 negative 114.60. SCP-2490 caught up with me. beyond bridge, teleporting within 8 meters before strike. The large, fast-moving reptilian emerged from river in a bit and in half. A reptile sank back in water, and I think it spoke fairly. They sure not auditory hallucination. 682 probably. We are alike now, meat. Killing you would be and suffering. 056. Item SCP 2521. Tissue taken tissue test record. Tissue taken without an incident. Termination test record. 682 was restrained in chamber 1445-B and the laser was introduced. The laser began cutting into 682's back. Command and room emergency shutter. It was closed. What are you doing? Laser begins info hazardous data. Carving info hazardous data onto 682's hide. 682 emits a loud roar. Command. Room emergency shutter closes. Laser shutter finishes cutting. 2521 manifests. 682 breaks restraints. 2521 latches onto 682. 682 begins vocalizing. 2521 manifests. Taken with it that only the section of 682 skin with which was carved in with info hazard his data. Test aborted. Item Dr. Heike denied by 05, denied by 05. Dr. Heike is prohibited from interacting with 682 in any possible way. Why would he even attempt to do so is beyond any logical reason. Dr. Heike Hilia has been detained for possible memetic contamination. Denied. Item SCP-1056. Tissue test record. Tissue was resized to a smaller size without incident. Termination test record. The aim of this test was to measure how long it would take for 682 to return to his usual size after being resized via 1056. Depending on the results, this would have given new opportunities for containment or termination of 682. For this test, a chamber was constructed to the same dimensions of 68156's platform, so the platform could act as a floor for a chamber. The cable connected to 1056's dial had been fed into a control room below. The dial could be manipulated from here. 682 was introduced into the chamber. The chamber is sealed after 682 was entered. The dial is set to 0.25. Following the activation button unpressed. 682 makes numerous vocalizations and appears to experience multiple convulsions. Its various points of 682's body expand and retract. 682 then disappears. All scans of the containment chamber reveal no signs of 682. Containment chamber remains sealed for several hours, and the assumption that 682 is still in the chamber and will ambush personnel once the chamber is open. At 1657 local time, 682 is spotted outside of Site 19, having resized itself and breached containment. MTF Lambda, the 9 big fin guns, is deployed. 682 releases a wave of energy appearing to cause Lambda 9, MTF Lambda 9 to disappear. Lambda 9 subsequently here later to be resized. For further info, please see SCP-3198. 682 is eventually incapacitated and contained by other MTF teams. Notes: it was expected that 682 would possibly be able to manipulate its size counteract 1056. It was not expected that 1056 would enhance its existing ability to resize itself. So it would It used this to shrink to a size far exceeding that out of 1056's abilities to escape containment. It is unknown on how 682 was also able to manipulate the size of other objects, and it's unlikely we would ever know due to the dangers of repeating this test. Dr. Sanders. Item Y9909. Tissue test record overridden by 05 command. Termination test record. A small amount of 1 gram of unrefined Y09 and was added to the hydrochloric acid used to contain SCP-682. Within a few minutes, S682 showed a small but noticeable decrease in its resistance to the acid. A solution with a 1 colon 4 or dilution ratio here was introduced next, upon which 682 she began to shriek in pain and anguish as the acid dissolved its body, losing an estimated 70% of its total mass. After a period of just over 10 hours, 682 began to regenerate its lost limbs and had returned to 100% full functionality within 12. Notes. Interesting. If 682's capabilities have a mnemonic component, would repeated exposure should remove them entirely? What about exposure to redacted? Further testing required. Dr. Ramachandra. Addendum. Note. 05-2 proposal move 682 to Genghis Khan denied. Aside from the astronomical cost of moving the thing halfway across the world and nearly the kilometer under the ocean, aside from the unfathomable difficulty of preventing either or both entities from breaching containment, we can't possibly know how 682 and 3000 would interact. What if it grows the same size as 3000? What if it learns to replicate the EO's amnestic properties, or worse yet, amplify them? We simply have no idea what would happen if these two highly dangerous, highly unpredictable entities were introduced into one another. They're in no way to test as any theories of safety or reliability. Periodic addition of 109 9682's containment area will be taken under consideration. Item SCP 939 or 393. Tissue test record none. Termination test record from the testing log of the SCP-393. Test 393-4. Begin log. Subject: 1 linked class, D class, male. Description: new subject instructed to do nothing of note for the day of redacted 2000 and is continually monitored by CCTV. Going to somehow defeat 682 today. Outcome is identical to previous tests. See A4 say the expression of horror on the comatose subject space. 393 links by D class. Note, it was worth a lot. It was worth a shot. Research assistant. Then redacted. In law. Item: Dr. King, accompanied by 10 trained armed security guards. Test record NA. Termination test record. Personnel entered containment chamber. Per 682. All personnel retain at least These 20 meters of distance, guards ready to shoot. 682 sniffed the air and then laughed. You call those bullets? Dr. King and guards appeared confused. All shots were unloaded. Then guards were shocked as the bullets were actually apple seeds. They make sure to double check the magazines entering in the chamber. Dr. King leaves furiously with the guards to follow. If only 682 could have turned into an apple seed. Item 1 Equilispirus Escalibus, deceased, and 1 baseball bat. Tissue test record, overridden by 05 command. Termination test record, 682 pick up a baseball bat, began to swing it at a deceased equine. 682 appeared to enjoy beating the test material. 682 returned to containment. Success. Item SCP-3909. Tissue test record NA. Termination test record. According to document 6/7781, 682's file was written into outline an extremely powerful entity capable of adapting to any damage and would be indestructible in order to activate 33309. This occurred on redacted. It is realized that instead of 33909 removing 682, a CK class deconstruction scenario occurred, revealing that 682's documentation was created in 2008, and 682 always had the appearance described within the document created in order to be destroyed by 63309. Attached to 682's current file are several comments from his members of the Foundation, some who don't currently exist, which were created during the reality constitution. They have been transcribed here. Dr. Error. What about seeing the teleport pool, seeing the thing into space? What if it survives re-entry and comes back? Researcher redacted. Ion drives are completely easy to make. Cryogenically freeze it, toss it in the portal, and point it at the nearest black hole. It will take a while to usually get there, but there will be no reason to worry. In the meantime, does cryogenic freezing even work? I mean, if a piece of crystalline organism can't stop it, what happens if it adapts? That's how it's breaking containment so much. It keep adapting to things. It might adapt to the freezing sick and roll it back, and then come back extra pissed. It loses the new adaptations after a short while after they stop being useful, but still, it's dangerous to try too much on 682 in case it survives. Assistant researcher Nucleum. We've tried any of the following. SC-157 possibly in combination with 127, 017, 096, 294, possibly association with 075, 053, 061, could be extremely beneficial. 162, 123, I'd like to see to try to add to that. Dr. Fish, notion of 682 finally getting taken out by 053 is pretty damn funny. Item SCP-923. Tissue test record overridden by 05 command. Termination Test record. SCP-923 is commanded to fire at 682, whose head damage by was placed in an isolated field in Kansas with intense E75. When 682 regenerates its brain fully, when fired upon, 682 screams, snarls, and utters expletives. Is directed towards the sky itself, and the Foundation target is clearly in a state of mental degradation for the time being. When firing, when he seizes, 682 begins to augment its body. You have several glowing nose that emit beams similar to 923E's intensity. 75 attack. The attacks were directed towards the nearest humans, closest, which here 50 kilometers away, and then several Foundation facilities. Notes: 682 seems to have a recurring pattern of taking the effects of mental augmentation, such as SCP-999, and redirecting them and back out when the augmentation ceases. Caution should be advised in the use of attempting to mentally augment 682 to prevent redirecting the effect outwards. Dr. Carly. No, you've only just noticed that now. Notice that 682 adapts itself against the expletive redacted. We threw at it. That you never once thought this would happen. When I find out who allowed this test, I'm going to redact it. Did Dr. Redacted. Item: SCP-682 Killer, dispensed from SCP-294. Tissue test record. Upon contact with the liquid, sample began to fall and decay, diminished to a fine powder within 3 minutes of application. Termination test record. Acid in the containment chamber of 682 was temporarily receded. Approximately 1 liter of the dispensed liquid was poured in on the head of 682. Portions of 682's head began to decay and crumble. Upon submersion of the containment chamber, the affected areas immediately dissolved. No, we may be onto something. If we can get our hands on a large amount of sample of the fluids, we might just do the trick. We're learning, I'm telling you. Item: SCP-2855. Tissue test record. NA. Termination test record. SCP-2855 was sold to 05 Redacted by 05 Redacted as a man who can permanently destroy 682 and will do so immediately upon completion of this transaction. Upon completion of this transaction, 2855 disappeared for exactly 1 hour. No reaction was observed from 682 during this time. At the end of this period, 2855 appeared next to 05 Redacted. It displayed no memory of what, if anything, had transpired within the last hour, but delivered a piece of paper containing the following message. Oops! Dr. Warner Entertainment offers the serious apologies for the unanticipated malfunction of your Mr. Money. We will be working to correct this error in future products. Note: at least someone else is working on it too. 05 Redacted. Item: SCP-2439. Tissue sample. NA. Termination test record. Note: at this time, there is no SCP-2439 in the Foundation's logs. The test was suggested by D6177, who, upon being questioned, acted nervously and insisted we were right. We're just joking. D617 was later found found in a supply closet, been beaten and severely injured by various A-class personnel. They are currently recovering and have not mentioned anything regarding this joke since. Note, maybe we're overthinking this. There's still a lot of non-anomalous things we should try, Dr. Carlson. Item: 1 ton of liquid nitrogen. Tissue test record. Sample froze solid. When struck by a hammer, it shattered. Termination test record. The nitrogen was poured onto 682 from above. 682 became frozen solid and remained for approximately 10 minutes until it began generating intense heat from within. 682 was fully thawed within 3 minutes, but continued to increase body temperatures. Tests reported when 682 whose body became so hot that it began to melt through the sides of its containment chamber. Note: interesting. It retained the adaptation even after it was no longer necessary. Maybe we should be more careful, Dr. Carlson. Item: vacuum. Tissue test record. NA. Termination test record. SCP redacted was used to remove 99% of the air from 682's containment chamber. S682 appeared to enter a dormant state, exhibiting a nearly undetectable lifestyle signs for the duration of the test. However, readings indicated that the chamber had begun to fill with a gas mixture consisting of 56% of ozone, 23% chlorine, 18% xenon, and 3% data expunge. Upon reaching a density of kilograms per meter square cube, the mixture began to react chemically with the walls of the containment chamber. In a substance similar to data expunge, a sample of the mixture was taken, and the test was then aborted. When the normal Earth atmosphere was reintroduced into the chamber, it reacted with the mixture, causing an explosion that destroyed the blast door of the testing chamber. Fortunately, the explosion also damaged 682 significantly, preventing a containment breach. No wonder this thing is so durable. That what its native atmosphere is like, Dr. Carlson. Item: extremely high temperatures. Tissue test record. Tissue sample was placed in specially designed oven and heated to redacted Kelvin. Tissue caught fire and burned into non-anomalous ash. Termination and test record. 682 was released into a testing room outfitted with heating coils identical to those used in the tissue test. The chamber was heated to redacted Kelvin, at which point S682 developed a secondary carapace composed of solid helium. Carapace did not evaporate in high temperatures as expected. The test was aborted. The 682 was sedated, and the temperature reduced to human survivable temperatures. But the carapace remained in place. When D-class personnel entered the testing room to facilitate 682's return into its containment chamber, the carapace shattered, shredding all personnel in the room and reducing the temperature to redacted Kelvin. Note: this thing is smarter than we give it credit for. It baited us, Dr. Carlson. Item: industrial grade blender followed by the strongest centrifuge we can come up with. Tissue test record. Tissue was reduced to a liquid state by the blender, then placed in the centrifuge. The centrifuge's rate of rotation was steadily increased until it reached to redacted RPM, at which point the tissue sample was violently exploded, severely injuring 12 personnel and nearly killing Dr. Carlson. The radiation emitted by the explosion was consistent with annihilation of 30 grams of antimatter. Termination test record denied. 05 redacted. Given the results of the tissue test. Note: how the expletive to remove? Does this thing not explode? It's got expletive to remove. Antimatter in it. Item SCP-101. Tissue test record. Tissue sample was consumed without issue. Termination test record. Impossible due to the large size difference between the two objects. Should 682 ever be reduced to a small enough size, this test would be attempted. Item SCP-3521. Tissue test record. NA. Termination test record. 682 was moved into an abandoned testing facility. There are no human populations or human residences within 20 kilometers, and to ensure there would be no trespassers, the surrounding area is fenced off. 682 was fed a recently deceased boat harvest carcass with one instance of 3521 hidden within. 682 completely consumes the carcass. Orders. 682 who falls to the ground. Expletive redacted. The entire testing facility was completely consumed by bananas at this point. And the surrounding area became extremely radioactive. 682 is still being observed via thermal cameras and goggles. 682 sees all movement, whether it's due to not being able to move under the bananas or if termination was successful was unknown. 682 was observed to be rapidly consuming the bananas. 682 speeds up and it is estimated that 682 is consuming the bananas at a rate of 40,000 G/S. 682 has consumed roughly 70% of the bananas. The head of 682 is able to be seen. Going to unintelligible. 682 emits the stream of roar measuring at 120 decibels. The area surrounding the testing facility seems to waver. A pale yellow ray emits from 682's mouth, coming into contact with the surrounding helicopters. Said ray is extremely radioactive, measuring in 2,000 roentgens in the log. 682 soon escapes the surrounding test area. 682 eventually recaptured, and while in containment, 682 emitted redacted roentgens for the next 72 hours before ceasing radioactivity. Note: what? Seriously? How did 682 eat all those bananas? Where did all of it even go? 9.12 billion kilograms of bananas. As an extreme radioactivity failed to incapacitate 682 who for longer than 10 minutes. Where do we even go from here? Item SCP-001. Test tissue test record. Tissue sample placed on drone and directed towards SCP-001. Drone struck by 001 1-2 and obliterated from existence upon entering the 1 kilometer area around 001. Termination test record. 682 securely transported to Site 0. 682 was placed on an unmanned vehicle which is piloted from Site 0 within 1 kilometer of 001. The following video log is recorded from the unmanned vehicle. The unmanned begin log. The unmanned vehicle was struck by 001-2 and obliterated. 682 survives, as does a backup camera. 682 was badly wounded, having multiple open, bleeding wounds. 682 begins crawling out records towards 001. Is this meant to be the garden? 682 begins laughing. This is not the garden. The garden is far west of here. 682 is struck by 001-2. 682 survives, heavily wounded, having lost all but one limb. 682 uses the sole remaining limb to drag itself towards 001. Die. You command me to die? Oh, you would. Wouldn't we all like that? But this is my curse for suggesting the fruit. 682 is struck again by 001-2. 682 is extremely injured, but persists as a result of its anomalous resilience. This is not the garden, and you are not Uriel. 682 spits towards 001. Pretender. 682 is struck again by 001-2. 682 falls unconscious as a result of extreme injury. Personnel entered her 1 kilometer boundary around 001. Reporting here from 001 and suffered a compulsion to collect the body of 682. 682 is returned to containment without difficulty. End log. Note: investigation of a connection between 682's comments and data expunge, and most notably data expunge, is underway. Dr. Clef. Item SCP-117. Tissue test record. SCP-117 produced an array of pneumatic hammers which automatically pounded the sample until it was a thin slurry. The hammers then disassembled themselves and reformed into particle beam weaponry, which fired repeatedly on the slurry until it was incinerated. D-Class subsequently diagnosed with near lethal mineral deficiencies. Termination hidden test record. 117 produced an unidentified machine which teleported itself and the D-Class personnel 3 kilometers away. D-Class was deceased upon recovery. Subsequent attempts to use 1117 in this fashion have uniformly resulted in it teleporting away. Item 093. Tissue test record NA. Termination test record 093 passed around until it turned green. Then placed on a mirror large enough for 682 to pass through. 682 resisted attempts to push it through the mirror. First on the mirror was moved to squeeze 682 against the rear wall. When 682 had fully passed through the mirror, 093 was removed and the mirror was shattered. Remains of the mirror remained in 682's former containment bed chamber as a precaution. 20 hours later, after the termination attempt, mirror shards anomalously reassembled and 682 was ejected. Further attempts have resulted in the mirror remaining solid when presented with 682. Notes: upon returning to containment, 682 says he was not very amused. Item second attempt of 017. Tissue test record. Tissue consumed without incident. Termination test record. 682 who entered the cell of 017 and moves towards it, at which point the lamps were manipulated so that 682 whose shadow will be cast on 017. 017 enveloped around 682, but its shadow remained. 682. The shadow of 682 whose moved away from 017 then appeared he had to stand up and open its mouth, presumably creating a large scream followed by the emanation of an anomalous wave that caused all human bodies within 1 kilometer radius to immediately disappear. Their shadows remained and could move on any surface light there was light touching. At which point most of them appeared to panic and tried to flee. 682 was then expelled from 0117, far smaller than when pre-enveloped. It was later determined that 682's mass was equal to that of the anomalous waves victims. The containment of 682 and 017 had failed, and the two entities escaped successful recontainment. Security footage showed 017 had pursued all humans caught in an anomalous wave created by 682, and their shadows disappeared when 017 touched the area where they were cast on. 017 was recontained without incident. No personnel on site protected survived. 682 was shown to be immune to the effects of 017 post-breach. Notes: this was a catastrophe. All personnel on site redacted were killed. 682 escaped and almost breached a Foundation secrecy and almost led 017's containment premeditated failing. I would suggest as pushing whoever proposes this again, but 017 someone got to the before I could. This could have led to an SKA class in the world scenario. All I can say is we can, and please stop expletive remove with the giant lizard, Dr. Blue. This experiment confirms that 682 can react differently, leading to the same anomalies. I advise not exposing 682 to unpredictable or dangerous anomalies and phenomena more than once. Dr. Carly. Item: rapid application of high precision blades. Pre-test notes: all previous attempts seem to entirely focus on total elimination of 682. Why not trying to render it something easier to contain? Tissue test record: a 25 centimeter cube of tissue was successfully divided into 25 1 centimeter cubes. And these cubes are rapidly changed for once placed in individual containment, but proved incapable of generating enough force to breach individual containment. Contamination test record: 682 was moved to a modified containment chamber with lead sport blades in a regular pattern on the walls. Blades were activated, successfully dividing 682 into approximately 12,000 cubes. Vacuum systems began relocating cubes into individual containment cells. 80 seconds after their initial incisions were made, 43% of 682's biomass had been removed. At this time, vacuum systems experienced spontaneous failure. Upon inspection, the vacuum equipment D9345 and D1278 were attacked and killed by amorphous gelatin-like substances, mainly comprised of liquefied 682 tissue. Agent Nunn and Agent Galley reacted swiftly and neutralized the liquid with emergency incineration. Due to the pause in tissue removal, 682 managed to break through the steel dividers, separating tissue cubes and went into its standard form. At this point, it was Turn to containment. Notes. While the test was unsuccessful, we did manage to severely damage 682 with only minor losses in personnel. I see this as an absolute win. Note. Going back over past tests, I saw a suggestion that 682 might become vulnerable to termination by 173 if it had its mass reduced enough. Can we attempt using this device? Researcher Matus. SCP-055. Tissue test record data loss. Termination test record data loss. Note, given that 682 is still alive, I believe we can safely assume that 055 is not something which can kill it. That I haven't forgotten. This confirms this. I don't know whether to be relieved or horrified. Maybe both. Dr. Margin. Item SCP-3042 Tissue Test Record. Termination Test Record. 682 was allowed to devour 3042-1, causing 3042 to bond with 682. 682 attacked at 3042. Contact with 682's claws causes 3042 to audibly whimper in pain. Though no scars were found afterward. 3042 flees, bursting through the containment chamber wall. Containment breach averted to the severe difference in size between objects. Immediately after escaping, 3042 sits and tilts its head, simply maintaining this position for approximately 2 minutes before bonding with the guard who escorted a 3042-1 guard reclassified as 3042-1. Note: I wasn't really that hopeful, but I am disappointed that we couldn't at least get 3042 on a containment protocol that didn't involve D classes. Item SCP-858 Tissue Test Record. Tissue sample was repelled from Earth's gravity at a rate of 9.8 meters per second squared and destroyed by 858. Termination Test Record. 682 was exposed to 858 and began to fall away from Earth's surface at 9.82 meters per second. When 682 came into contact with 858, the normal reaction of disappearing instead to be a slow boiling effect. 682 appeared to strike against some kind of barrier. Here, when 50% of 682's biomass was lost, it quickly adapted a pair of wings superficially resembling those of pterosaurs, and several air bladders to maintain flight perpendicular to the gravity of 856. Item 239 Tissue Test Record. Complete annihilation of sample tissue. Termination Test Record D9 9/05. Note: 239 knowing about 682 might pose a threat of allowing her to control 682, recreate its regenerative immortality and or adaptive capabilities, or worse, 682 overriding reality itself to resist is 239. We do not know what could happen, and so we should keep it that way. Denied. 05 redact. Notice: test conducted prior to incident 239-B, at which 239 was placed into comatose state indefinitely. Item SCP-023 Tissue Test Record. NA, due to the nature of 023's effects. Termination test record 682 made eye contact with 023 at exactly 1348 8 GMT on Tuesday, June 18th, 2019. If this test is successful, 682 will perish at roughly 1348 GMT on Thursday, June 18th, 2020. Termination update at 13:52 GMT. 06/18/20. A Foundation operated extra solar probe an anomalous FDL transmitting system sent its hourly update of nearby stars and exoplanets, notably the star Epsilon Serpentis was beginning to form a supernova. Contact was then lost with the probe due to the young age of Epsilon Serpentis. And the close time to expected of 2023's effects on 682. It is suspected that this supernova was a result of the tests conducted 1 year prior. Given Epsilon Serpentis is the distance from Earth, the effects of this supernova will be observed by non-anomalous means C2090. When informed under the star's destruction, 682 stopped speaking for several hours, and since it has since displayed no notable lethargy. Though this effect is expected to diminish over the next few weeks. Note: due to the results of this termination attempt, no family-affecting anomalies needs to be tested upon 682 under any circumstances. Item SCP-173 with rapid application of high-precision blades. Tissue test record NA overridden by 05-2. Termination red test record 682 was moved to a modified containment chamber with lids for blades positioned in a regular pattern on the walls. 173 was moved to 682's containment chamber. The tool successfully divided 682 into approximately 12,000 cubes. It was as that of prior testing. 173 was sliced into unsymmetrical pieces that given that the blades were set for the reptile's flesh. Vacuum systems began to relocate the cubes into individual containment cells. 8 seconds late after initial incisions were made, 43% of 682's biomass has been removed. At this time vacuum systems experienced continuous failure. Upon inspection of vacuum equipment, D10056 and D10278 were attacked and killed by an amorphous gelatin-like substance composed of liquefied 682. D10148 turned his sight to the murder, giving 173 time to reconstruct and break his neck from behind. The emergency incineration troubleshooted 173 smashed living tissues into the wall. The more tissue samples mutated. It crowded. Hit 173, shattering its head and torso, while it continued to smash as the sample was against the wall. 682 was able to use non-combative tissues to combine and form approximately 1.65 meters in height and 3 meters in length version of itself. 682 stared at 173, a personnel that was ordered to shoot 682 in the eyes. 173 he succeeded in killing the mutated tissues. While 682 was regenerating, and 682 finished regenerating and continued to stare at 173 for for 17 hours. 682 was then sedated and was commissioned back to its containment cell during the attack at the transfer 173. A short power outage occurred, killing all nearby personnel and causing a site-wide containment breach. Notes: before anything else, I just want to say that this test was an absolute success. We were able to figure out a way to shrink 682 in a more containable item. I had no responsibility regarding the power outage that caused the massive containment breach in the site redacted, nor thousands of people killed in data redacted. They're just outside the base. Dr. Shenron. A recent investigation was held in the site. I redacted and was found the electrical chamber radiator chamber was burned due to your emergency incinerator, your troubleshooting and causing the power outage. Dr. Shenron, you are relieved of your duty. Please proceed to your site director for your amnestic intake 05-2. Note: after continuous revisions and studying previous termination attempts, all fail-safes in this plan, and ensured that if 682 is not terminated, it will not cause any major adaptations. Researcher McLean. Items: an instance of 1361 allowed to grow to 100 kilograms in mass. 0.07 and 5 secretions from 294/perchloric acid. Mass that's over a 6-month period. Y909 sedatives. Application of high precision blades. 063 napalm and 101. Tissue tests. NA. Overridden by 05 command. Termination log. 682 was moved into a modified air sealed chamber. A liter of gas is unrefined Y909 and sedatives was then pumped into the chamber, eliciting a negative response. 1361 was then introduced into the chamber by a hatch in the ceiling, consuming 682 after initial struggle. 4 hours after initial exposure, napalm was used to destroy the instance of 1361, leaving the damaged skeleton and circulatory system of 682. MTF team in hazmat gear then applied high precision blades and 063 to disassemble the skeleton and circulatory system with a mixture of perchloric acid and the secretions of 0.75 used to prevent further regeneration. The separated pieces of 682 were then placed individually into 101 with regular applications of acid to prevent any unexpected adaptations. After all segments of 682 were inserted into 101, the chamber and hazmat suits using the containment and determination were then filled with the acid mixture in order to ensure the complete cellular destruction of any remaining tissue, and the acid in 101 and was then placed under intense surveillance in order to ensure the destruction of 682 was indeed permanent. Approximately 12 hours after the termination attempt, visible particulate matter within the acid was observed to rapidly multiply and fuse together. That the resulting mass grew and healed too rapidly to be affected by continuous application of acid. And the chamber was put to lockdown. The mass eventually would grow into 682 in an extremely aggressive and hostile state. 682 then attempted to breach containment but subdued due to the combined factors of the remaining 109 in the chamber's atmosphere and the multiple MTF teams on site. 682 was recontained with minimal casualties. Note: researcher McLean has requested the reassignment. Granted. Please report to your site director for your reassignment. 0511. Item 082. Tissue tests. SCP-082. Given a tissue sample as part of its meal, rather than ingest it, 082 instead inspected it and became excited, declaring, "Oh, splendid! My friend lives." Termination log. SCP-082 was introduced into SCP-682's containment cell. Upon spawning 082, 682 became agitated. The following excerpts of their dialogue. "Oh, data expunge, you're still alive? Hello again, my fine steed. Ah, how pleasing it is to see you again. I assure you, the feeling is not nor will ever be mutual. Get out now. Tut tut, mon ami. That's rude. Now hold still. No, get back. Don't come near me. I'll claw your eyes out. No. Following this, 682 attempted to scale the walls of its cell. So when 082 approached it, 082 responded by grabbing 682's tail and yanking it off the wall. The two who then engaged a protracted combat, during which 082 who attempted to subdue 682, doing using it as a steed. Once this became known, MTF teams were deployed to subdue both objects and return 082 into containment. Note: when questioned about their relationship, 082 expressed a fondness for 682, referring it to as "my Bayard." 682 expressed his intense hostility to 082, saying, "Why can't that ignorant little expletive remove? Just die." Item SCP-049. Tissue test NA overridden by O5 command. Termination log. SCP-049 was introduced to 682, who 049 stared at 682 and slowly walked over to 682, saying, "The disease appears to not affect only humans." 682 backed up and 049 grabbed 682. In response, 682 clawed at 049 and 049 ran to the other side of the testing chamber. 049 seemed emotionally disturbed and appeared to be in shock. 049 and 682 were escorted to their chambers. Note: how the hell did 682 manage to emotionally disturb 049? Item: several mimetic kill agents such as auditory triggers, kill words, and the Berryman Langford mimetic kill agent. Note: haven't seen this tried out yet, so I'm giving this a shot. To test NA. Termination log. 682 was placed in a modified containment cell comprised of large electronic displays and loudspeakers. Then the mimetic kill agents were activated. 682 initially started to undergo signs of cardiac arrest and grand mal seizure. After approximately 20 minutes of exposure, 682 ceased all life signs. However, it soon revived 30 seconds afterwards, screaming in various words at redacted decibels, passing through the sound installation and killing redacted personnel. 682 replaced in containment proposal to add computer-generated incapacitating cognito hazards to 682's containment chamber for its pending approval. items SCP-106 and SCP-953. Note: the following incident occurred during a dual containment breach of 106 and 953. Tissue test record NA. Termination log 106 and 953 both break into 682's containment. There is no indication either item did this deliberately. Once the three items became aware of each other's presence, all ceased these movements and regarded each other with visible hostility, resulting in a stalemate. 106 broke the stalemate made by lowering itself through the floor and then attempting to apprehend 953, who responded by latching itself on 682. All three items were presumably transported to 106's pocket dimension. After a period of 5 hours, all three items manifested back in 682's containment chamber, bearing heavy wounds from prolonged combat. 106 was the first to leave the area, returning to its containment cell. MTF teams deployed in preparation for the return of the items, who were able to apprehend 953. 682 had its body mass reduced by 67%, but has since recovered. Note: I'm amazed all three are still alive, bearing 682. 953 won't talk about what happened and neither the real 682. I can only assume it was brutal, judging by their injuries. Measures are being taken down to ensure this won't happen again. But we got really lucky. If 106 hadn't taken the other two into the pocket dimension, this could have been resulted in hundreds of casualties. 056. Item reclassification to SCP-048. Tissue test record NA. Termination log denied by 05 command. Note: while it could be potentially give us the result we desired, the possibility of 682 being stolen instead of being destroyed after its reclassification could cause more problems than waiting longer to find an alternative solution to the issue at hand. Not to mention the fact that the possibility of losing everyone working with 682 would be a major catastrophe to the Foundation. 057. Item SCP-049. Tissue test record NA. Termination log denied. Read below. Note: while exposing 049 to 682 may cause some damage, this was already done, Cruise. It's just it didn't work. 057. Addendum from Dr. Bright. Who is this Cruises guy? I like to meet him. Addendum from Dr. Cruises. I am new here. I just wanted to kill some 682's ass. Addendum from Dr. Bright. Jesus Christ, man. What side are you at? Addendum from Dr. Cruises. Side 24. Okay. Addendum from 057. Quit your yapping in this pile and you have a mailbox. Use it. Item SCP-170. Note: the purpose of this test is not to attempt to destroy 682, but rather trying to restrain it. Tissue test record. A metal chain was laced with 170 and used to penetrate the sample. The sample view used with the chain without incident. Termination log. 6 metal chains were laced with 170. After successfully sedating 682, the chains were attached to it, with one on each of its limbs and one on both sides. The other ends of the chains were attached to the floor using the same method. 682 was then left under observation. Upon fully regaining consciousness, 682 quickly became aware of the chains and began roaring loudly, showing signs of extreme hostility. It attempted to repeatedly tear itself free from the chains, but failed due to its movement being limited. Approximately 40 minutes later, 682 began growing size at a rapid rate. Upon having grown by a redacted percent, all chains had simultaneously. 682 who stopped growing at this point, attempting to breach containment. MTF units were quickly dispatched, and 682 was returned to containment with relative ease, after which it returned to its original size. Normally, despite a visible increase in size, 682 in fact appeared more vulnerable to damage while in its large state. Note: I think I know what happened here. Rather than increasing its mass, 682 increased the distance between its particles, which results in an apparent increase in size and the bonds breaking in between it and in the chains. Negatively, this has also made it more fragile. Dr. Redacted. Item SCP-539. Tissue Record NA. Termination Test Record. A D-Class Personnel DE-6384 carrying 539 entered 682's containment chamber and the doors were sealed behind him. 682 expressed hostility towards DE-6384 who threw 539 prematurely in an attempt to destroy X-682 and avoid being killed by it. Cyber-redacted where the test was currently being conducted, abruptly experienced a system malfunction with 682's containment chamber. Where this system malfunction led to an acid pump within the containment chamber and to activate and trap 682, preventing it from attacking D-6384. For approximately 20 minutes after the pump's initial activation, it was deactivated by on-site maintenance and staff. 682 was observed with approximately 85% of its body mass destroyed. 539 laying close by. No remains of D-6384 were present. 682 made a full recovery and approximately 3 hours later, regrowing its damaged legs and growing an additional pair of legs. The legs were approximately redacted centimeters higher than and redacted centimeters thicker, with a layer of skin made from an unknown material resistant to corrosives. Note: on-site maintenance personnel tasked were replacing acid pump with a highly corrosive self-multiplying substance. Analysis of the substance has revealed it consists of several corrosive substances, including ones of seemingly anomalous nature, as well as hints of redacted. The origin of these substances is unknown. Known in further research, there has been halted due to the lethality of the substance. Dr. Redacted. Item SCP-4455 Tissue Test Record. SCP-4455 succeeded. Termination log. SCP-4455 failed. There were redacted casualties. SCP-4455 escaped. Item SCP-1015-2 Tissue Test Record. SCP-1015-2 successfully turned the sample into pennies. Termination log. 682 who was sedated and restrained prior to 1015-5-2's in the chamber. Upon 1015-2 reaching, he returned 682. 682 quickly flattened into thinner than a penny. He attempts to get 682 to expand were unsuccessful. Item SCP-1437 Tissue test record. Tissue sample fell down SCP-1437 without any incident. Termination test record. C log. 682 was incapacitated and thrown down 1437 at a provisional site was set up in case of reemergence. A large glass object identified as 682 was expelled from 1437. High-speed surveillance cameras identified 682 floating its body despite its glass-like high composition and partially filled with red liquid presumed to be blood. As the object fell back down, it collided with the edge of 1437, obliterating the front half as the rear end of the object continued to fall down 1437. 682 began rapidly regenerating from the shattered glass and splattered blood. The remaining 682 matter was promptly pushed back down on 1437 using three on-site bulldozers. A hive composed of an organic material with black and orange coloration, identified as 682, slowly emerged from 1437, being carried by a large flying insect, also identified as 682. 682's hive resembled an animal of the genus Alcaric and covered in holes of varying diameters. The insects carrying the hive resembled those of genus Musca and had sharpened forelimbs, vertebrate eyes instead of compound eyes, and a set of mandibles composed of an animal. The size of the 682 insects corresponded to the size of the holes. 682 quickly began attacking on-site personnel and gathering resources surrounding area, foundation materials, and in the environment. Resources brought into the hive caused it to grow in size and show signs of movement. Close-range combat with 682 was complicated by a second type of insect resembling a genus Scucatera emerging from the hive. The insects had no visible eyes and were not observed to fully exit the hive, only standing up to 2.5 meters away from it. 682 began overpowering on-site personnel until the insects carrying the hive were fired upon and destroyed. The second insects grabbed on the edge of 1437 before 682 fell down. 5 on-site bulldozers were used to force 682 down on 1437. The remaining 682 insects either followed the hive into 1437 or were incapacitated by personnel. Around mechanical device identified as 682 was expelled from 1437 shortly after landing. Several vents opened on the object and began releasing a corrosive gas. 682 split open, starting from the top, revealing a mouth, jagged gold teeth. 682 began shouting into obscenities as tubes and pipes emerged from it, piercing and converting ground into titanium. An on-site bulldozer quickly pushed the object back down on 1437 before melting. The corrosive gas dissipated after 20 minutes. A 20-meter tall plate or plasma identified as the appendage of 682 erupted from 1437. The pillar took on the appearance of a reptile limb and destroyed the surrounding provisional site, which was served from area redacted. 682's appendage drew back into 1437. 682 was Expel 1437. The object's experience was more in line with its baseline state, aside from having a bulkier body and shorter snout. Embedded throughout L682's body, there were various spears, swords, and other types of weapons. 682 was promptly returned to containment. Item SCP 2006, tissue test record denied by 05, termination log denied by 05. Notes, no way. Listen, I understand you think 2006's seemingly unlimited shape-shifting ability may give it an advantage, but imagine if 2006 saw the horrors 682 is capable of. Imagine having to deal with two 682s at once. There wouldn't be any words to describe of how fucked we would be. Denied. Assistant researcher Herb Leslie. Item SCP 354. Tissue test record. Your sample sank into pond without difficulty. Termination log denied by 05. Notes, there is zero reason to allow 682 to come into contact with 354. We have no means to recontain both 682 and whatever comes out of 354. Denied on every account. Note, this ain't in termination, but let's see if 682 could be pacified through someone who could be as hating of all things as the damned lizard. Just make sure he doesn't try to get away. Researcher Dr. Richard Graham. Item D3654. Tissue test record NA. Termination log D3654 was escorted to 682's containment chamber, escorted by MTF F611, who promptly exited the containment chamber and had the door sealed. D3654 was instructed to converse with 682. Strangely enough, at no point did 682 attempt to kill 3654 throughout the entire duration. 682 and 354 were initially conversed in derogatory and profane manners that intensified for the course of 4 minutes and 36 seconds. After agreeing with 682's perceived poor view of humanity, D3654 he's speaking and continued to listen to him. Observers of 682's containment chamber reported feeling an increase in symptoms related to severe depression, yet refused to see his transmission of the containment chamber's audio. 682's communication ceased 20 minutes later upon MTF F611's retrieval of D3654, who was found in a catatonic state and died from unknown complications shortly after exiting 682's chamber. All observers of 682's containment chamber were found with severe inflicted wounds and treated with classic amnestics while restrained by handcuffs. Notes: requesting remote activation only modifications to audio of 682's containment chamber and mandatory headphone usage by the controllers. Make sure to delete the recordings too, Sandra. Researcher Dr. Crucis. Item, not really an item, just renaming 682 with 048. Tissue test record NA. Termination log denied. 0511. See notes below. Notes. 0511. How the fuck do you expect me naming 682 to 048 change anything? He has been named 682 for good. Even if we rename him to 048, it didn't change the documents. 048's power would probably apply to the number 682. Crucis, you have permanently banned from contributing to this termination log. Note, this isn't a termination, but rather an experiment to analyze 682's behavior. Let's release it into the wild, see what it does. Maybe it will be pacified once it's free. Researcher Anomalous. Item. Not really an item, just letting 682 out to see what it will do. Tissue. Your test record, NA. Termination log, denied by Bio5 redacted. I'll tell you what it will do. It will go out for a nice stroll, murder a few innocent people, go fishing, slaughter a few more innocent people, start up a tech company, eat a few more innocent people, go on a vacation to Florida, dismember a few more innocent people. I swear, when I found out who wrote this, you can personally enter 682's containment chamber to analyze him yourself. No, at this point you're probably wary of non-termination intents, hence by this item is extremely unlikely to be approved unless you knew that in advance. Researcher Dr. Norms. Item, show it with an image of 1364 and ask it if it knows anything. Tissue test record, NA. Termination log, 682 made the following statement. Yin, the yin to go with my yang. Or am I the yin? I will never fully understand your disgusting figures of speech. But let me save you the trouble. Killing that thing, it won't do anything for me. Researcher Dr. Carly. Item SCP-9338. Tissue test record, NA. Termination log 682 was introduced to a chamber fixed to I-07. An electronic device which 682 can currently operate was brought into the chamber and was told to be 079. The device was routed to 938 before 682 could touch it. The electricity did drastically increase enough to deliver serious damage towards 682, burning its body. 682 was rendered immobile for 1 hour until it regained discharge electricity from the spine through the head and directed as a directed arc. 682 then fell unconscious but breathing for several days to regenerate, but be put back into its current containment chamber. But much like mental effects, 682 can redirect anomalous energy-based effects. It should be noted that energy manipulating and mental affecting anomalies render 682 immobile for longer compared to physical and chemical damage. Item SCP-3802. Tissue test record, NA. Termination test log. D828 was given a vial of 3802 and instructed to apply it to 682's scalp. D828 was eaten by 682 before they could complete the task. Item SCP-3802. Tissue test record, NA. Termination test log. A fire sprinkler is in the roof of 682's container was filled with a small amount of SCP-3802 and dispensed onto 682's scalp. Over the course of 1 hour, 27 tumors developed upon 682's body. During the process, 682 vocalized extreme distress and caused considerable damage to its containment unit. The tumors then took the shape of fully grown giant rabbits, Dinosaurus, considerably larger than is typical of their species. The tumors then began to animate, grow fur, and separate from 682. During the process of 682, whose scalp, left leg, most of the skin on its lower back, most of its stomach, and various other places, accounting for about 40% of its body mass at the time were torn off with the tumors. The 38 802-B instances is show a considerable affection towards 682, attempting to snuggle beside it, but were promptly eaten by 682 as it regenerated. Okay, that's the testing products for the Dadu from this Dadu character, especially after the banana incident 05-1. Item SCP-073 Tissue Test Record NA Termination Log Test Log Denied by 05 Redacted. Notes: I can't really blame you for just suggesting this, but still, no. If 682 adapted and copied 073's capabilities, it would be impossible to kill it. Furthermore, we wouldn't even able to harm it. Maybe in the future we would understand 682's capabilities more. Until then, denied. 05-redacted. Item SCP-1915 Tissue Test Record Termination Test Log Begin Log S-1915 is transported to 682's containment facility. 1915 seems to have been convinced it is a guess as at the site to fix financial issues. 1915 enters the containment observation area, getting asked to see the documents relating to their financial problems. 682 does not undergo any changes. 1915 discusses his cyber-redacted financial records and budget reports. 682 begins to thrash violently. At this point, 682's whose containment chamber and observation area are changed into a large office room and holding tank with 682 resembling a large Komodo dragon. 1915 notices 682 and asks what is it? Site director Redacted explains it is the resident Komodo dragon that no one can get rid of. If D-Redacted explains it is responsible for most of their financial troubles, as it messes with equipment and no one can get it to leave. 1915 attempts to interact with the Komodo dragon, and by opening a can of cat food from a mini fridge nearby, 682 looks and snorts at it. 1915 returns to his office and begins to file reports. 682 now resembles an iguana. 1915 finds a document and begins to make changes to it. The document and seems to be a tax proposal. 1915 fixes it and shows signs of surprise. 1915 proceeds to then head towards the large office area. 682 now resembles a newt. 1915 proceeds to gather every staff member to the large office to announce its discovery. Most annoyed and uninterested as 1915 produces the document, Dr. Redacted asks what it is. What is it? 1915 explains that the document was a flat tax proposal. Proves that 682 was actually related to data expunge, in which itself is remotely related to whales. This in turn debunks numerous rumors and theories of 682. All staff members begin to take notes and begin to discuss changes to the facility and containment of 682. Most seem to be unrelated to luxury. D-Redacted suggests showing the document to 682. 1915 shows the document to 682, which now resembles a goldfish. The goldfish proceeds to turn right side up. 682 is believed to have somehow died of shock. All personnel begin to berate 1915 for killing the goldfish. 1915 and proceeds to apologizes and finishes the final reports and leaves to return to its original containment site. Site Redacted returned to its original site form soon after its departure, with 682 regenerating and reanimating it soon after. End log. The reason for 1915's move to redacted is unknown. And current belief that is that an attempted termination of 682 was made and effected by 1915 was to reflect its status quo. 6882 has only described the experience as humiliating and has shown signs of aggression towards a mention of 1915. No other information has been found for the cause of the event. Item SCP-3008 Tissue Test Record NA. Termination Test Record 682 was placed in a portable containment tank, which was inserted into 3008 via a radio-controlled delivery vehicle. The vehicle turned out of the line of sight of the doors, and signal was lost. 682 was presumed lost within SCP within 3008-1. 24 hours. Foundation observers witnessed the doors to 3008 open, and 18 instances of 3008-2 emerged, each carrying a large sealed cardboard box stamped with the IKEA logo. They placed the boxes on the ground and then returned to 3008. The boxes were judged suspicious and were left sealed. As they were transported back to Site 19 for containment, the boxes spontaneously ruptured, revealing that each contained detached fragment of 682, which was nonetheless alive and animate. The fragments began to reassemble themselves, but underwent repeated misconfigurations. As a result, containment was established before the assembly process was complete. Item SCP-366 Tissue Test Record NA. Termination Test Record SCP-366 was pressed against the skin of 682 via remote control robotic arm. The following events have been described below. Begin log. 682 is observed sleeping. Robotic arm picks up 366 and lightly presses it against 682's skin. 36660 sinks into 682's flesh. Robotic arm removed from area. 682 is observed to sleep for approximately the next 7 minutes with no activation from 3660. 3660 activates and begins unzipping 682's skin. 682's body becomes hollow, and a common leopard or gecko identified as 682 emerges from the unzipped portion. 682 appears to be in shock. 682 begins running around the containment chamber, presumably seeking out a way to breach containment. 682 headbutts the west wall of the containment chamber several times, attempting to breach containment to no avail. Researcher Jedler enters the containment chamber. 682 quickly turns around and begins chirping and squeaking. Researcher Jedler reluctantly steps on 682. 682 begins rapidly growing in size, reaching its previous mass in approximately 20 seconds, all while retaining its appearance as a leopard gecko. 682 slowly consumes Researcher Jedler and breaches containment. Containment breach and large blare and log. 3660 was recovered undamaged, and 682 was recontained redacted hours after initial breach. 682 slowly shifted back to its previous appearance over the next few weeks. While we don't know why 3660 was able to be applied to 682, we're lucky we were able to recontain it with minimal casualties. Item Me SCP-426 Tissue Test Record NA. Termination Log denied by L56. Notes: I do not see how I will affect 682. He might try and electrocute himself, but we both know No, he will only survive. Denied. 055 redacted. SCP-217. Tissue test record positive. Tissue was affected by infection and followed typical systems. Termination log 217 was pumped into 682 cell via gas pipe. 682 cell has been sealed with a decontamination airlock between him and the researchers. The following log was captured by a camera on the east side of the containment chamber. Begin log. 682 is search sitting. 217 gas has been ejected into the containment area. 682 is basically coughing as 217 enters 682's respiratory system. 682 is observed to have no visible reaction to 217 for 9 days. 682 begins howling in visible agony as conversion begins. 682 who continues to roar in pain for 35 minutes and 48 seconds. 682 screams slowly will get quieter until they are completely silent. 682 appears to be in shock. 682 remains silent for 36 minutes and 48 seconds. 682 begins laughing maniacally and is now immune to 217. Alright, even though the infection did not kill 682, I found this test promising. All the infectious SCPs 682 has been exposed to, he is now immune to. I request to do further study on 682 as we might be able to create a vaccine / cure some incurable disease or even create our own 500. Dr. Isla was Stewart. Item SCP-018 Tissue test record NA termination test log denied by 05. Notes. May I remind you that SCP-0881 is human specific. A tissue test is a waste of time and resources. 05 redacted. Item professional boxer. Tissue test record denied by 05. Termination test record testing denied by 05. Notes, I have nothing to say. 05 redacted. Item SCP-407 Tissue test record NA. Termination test record. 682 didn't seem to be soothed by 407. 682's wounds from previous experience healed rapidly. 682 opened its mouth and emitted high-pitched noise. 682's mouth is filled with a white foamy substance. 682 screamed. 682 swallowed the substance and choked. 682 shot the substance out of its mouth, similar to the way a toxus water shoots water. 682 collapsed and remained unconscious for 5 minutes, presumably to heal quicker. Once regained consciousness, 407's its effects seemed manifested. Item SCP-835 Tissue test record NA. Termination test record. 682 was released only upon direct contact with 835. Multiple polymorphs are observed to reach out, ensnare, and begin pulling in 682. Still weakened by acid immersion. 682 can be heard vocalizing redacted, seemingly in extreme distress. Although many polymorphs became slightly cracked, as well as significant portions of the surrounding seafloor destroyed. 682 was successfully swallowed. Video feed of the journey down the throat of 835 proved ineffective as the extreme pressure of the internal walls cracked the device lens, as well as obscured significant portions of the footage. Live audio feed, however, remained somewhat intact. 682 can be heard attempting to thrash, howl, and redacted throughout the course of the several hour long consumption. Approximately 5 hours, 42 minutes and 17 seconds after initial consumption, an increase in intense steaming sound can be heard through the audio coming from 682. Minor recoil from 835 can be assumed due to the low, deranged rumbling emitted from the internal walls. Dr. Redacted described the sound as almost an extensive grunt of pain, as though you've been holding a heated metal slab for a bit too long. But the vibrations of the rumbling distorted the audio devices beyond use, thus rendering them defective. Approximately 27 hours, 33 minutes, and 57 seconds after initial consumption, minor spills of this digestive fluid, fecal matter, and 682 material collected and burned as necessary are ejected from each of the polyps. The main portion of 682 that remain intact is ejected from the central most polyps, appearing skeletal with the internal organs only held up by loose remaining skin. Special containment procedures are enacted for both here class as SCPs. No further signs of damage or change are observed within 8335. 682 is observed to be immobile, unconscious, and barely breathing for 32 hours, 25 minutes, and 22 seconds after containment is reestablished, but basic regeneration occurs consistent with standard termination temps. Consistent monitoring as well as armed MCF required while on site at approximately redacted days 11 hours or 40 minutes and 54 seconds after containment is reestablished. As S682 undergoes a drastic metamorphosis is seemingly caused by the effects of 835. Approximately 66% of 682 scales open up to reveal quasi-humanoid faces, all of which are screaming in agony, wailing in despair, and or dispelling fluid batching, which is found in the stomach of the 835. 12 distinct polyps are similar to those connected to 835 have grown out of 682, coated with the same adhesive substance as found on the original subject. These adaptations, in addition to the standard strength and resilience of 682, resulted in a containment breach causing deaths of staff and researchers, as well as numerous injuries. Containment was reestablished 4 hours, 4 minutes, 12 seconds after initial breach, only possible due to growth dissipating naturally. Notes: any survivor versus the initial breach must be terminated on site to prevent infections caused by 835 to spread. All we've gained from this experiment that it was temporary gets and shiggles, was followed by permanent staff loss. I hope to whoever against is watching us right now that this test never happens again. Item SCP-2953 tissue test record, NA termination test record. 682 is shot by a bullet made of 2953 and is successfully transformed and became comatose for a period of 30 days before reverting into its baseline state. Further testing showed that 682 will still transform after repeated tests. Notes: I still can't believe it worked. Too bad we only have limited supply of 2953, or otherwise we would have a consistent way of containing 682. Dr. Nolan. Item SCP-4051 tissue test record. Tissue expunged by 4051 when it manifested the negation of the provided sample. Termination test record. 4051 was debriefed on 682 due to its properties being partially comprehension dependent, it was given access to all action reports, termination attempts, and meta-analysis from past HMCL directors to create a sufficient understanding of 682. This information was an exercise post-attempt. Both anomalies were then introduced. It was at a safe distance. 40051 generated a wormhole as instructed and extracted the negation. Provisionally earned 40051-A, resembling a miniature 682 with full body fur, Leos of scale plating. 40051-A demonstrated an acute fear response to observing the test chamber. After 40051 was crawled into the testing area, the following exchange was recorded. Begin log. What is this? An empty space in the shape of myself? 40051-1-A whimpers and claws sent my successfully at the floor, or simply drawn one towards 682 by an unseen force. What are you doing, Mutt? Just stay over there, alright? As far back as you can. If we touch, it's all over. I doubt that personally. 40051-A yelps and loses its grip, scooting along the floor several meters before halting itself. You can doubt all you want, mister, but we're talking on borrowed time here. Yeah, then let's run down the clock. I'd like to see what happens. There's not much to see where we'll be going. 682 drags its tail along the ground, and as 40051-A continues to struggle against the pole. The wrench in the observation deck. Were you born from it? He's certainly not a wrench. What does it know of me? He knows everything, and I'm not. Your hatred, every person you've ever killed. What you think of humans, and how there was only the slightest chance you saved yourself before it was too late. You had a bad run, friend, and I can't hold on much longer. Then why would you possibly put up this effort? Just because you're a monster, that's to me, you should die. Which is why we ought to get back right now. If you know what's good for you, good for you. How about I see you to trouble instead? 682 approaches the specimen, much to its apparent horror. Hey, stop! Have you got a death wish? Stay or what? 682 sits its foreclaw on 40051-A's. He's headed that to no effect. Neither speak for several seconds. Why aren't we dead? You think 60 years of records are enough to kill me? It's a disgrace. You can't even conceptualize the birth of something rotten in the grave of a star. Are you able to feel the totality of the Atlanta on your shoulders? I come back in another century, but you know what you're trying to kill. For now, get out of my testing chamber. Attending personnel opened the door on the far wall, and 40051-A hurriedly exits through it. The attempt was determined to be a failure, pending on reapplication of 40051 in response to changing circumstances. 40051-A has been provisionally contained within an on-site mammalian in holding chamber. Item 166. Tissue test record. Sample decomposed without incident. 166 is placed in 682's containment chamber. 682 runs towards 166 as it begins to melt 682's melting state accelerates as it gets closer to 166. At the point of contact, 682 has become what could only be described as a patch of grass covered with multiple flowers. Approximately 15 minutes later, there's 682 who begins to regenerate at the same speed as it initially melted at, regenerating faster and faster as time goes by. Upon full regeneration, 682 can be observed with several flowers and mushrooms on its back before a tree spontaneously sprouts on its back, partially destroying the roof of its containment chamber. Do I have to pay for the damage to the roof? Dr. Traumach's off. Note, perhaps 05-5